Hello, today we're going to be talking about plot elements. This is something you've been working on since you were probably in fourth or fifth grade. So a lot of this will be very much of a review for you. So don't worry about it. Just go through and we're going to look at some new things. All right, the first thing that you're going to see is the plot diagram. Ours looks a little different if you're coming to the middle school for the first time in sixth grade or if you're new to our system. But this is basically your plot diagram that you use with fiction. You only use this type of a plot diagram when you're reading false, fake, fiction stories. It's made up of the exposition, which is your beginning of your story. It's where you learn about the characters, you learn about the background information, the settings. You're introduced to your protagonist and your antagonist. A lot of things happen in the exposition. If it's in a novel, it might be the first full chapter. If it's a short story, it might just be the first paragraph or two. But that's your exposition. And then the second thing that you'll see is your rising action. Your rising action will begin as soon as we figure out what the conflict is between the protagonist and the antagonist. So once you've figured out who the main character is, then you'll have the antagonist who comes along and gives the protagonist a problem. Once you identify that conflict, then the rising action begins to develop. As you get to the rising action, you will learn about how the conflict develops, what happens, what's the troubles that they're going through, and then that will lead up to the climax, which is the highest point of action or the turning point in the story. And as you can tell, it's like a mountain going up to the climax, the turning point of the story, when you see where the end is how it's gonna work out. Then you have the falling action, and that's only a few little things that happen after the climax. And then this is where the story kind of starts wrapping itself up, and you see the loose ends being tied up. And then you end the story with your resolution. The resolution is just what it is. It's the very end of the story, how the story ends, what's happened to the characters. Do they live happily ever after? What's going on with them? And usually, if it's in a novel, it's the probably last 3 or 4 pages. If it's a short story, it might be the last paragraph. But your resolution is just the end of the story. Then, of course, on this plot diagram, we're going to be talking about the point of view. Is the story written in first person, second person, or third person, objective, limited, or omniscient? What is the author's purpose? Of course, if we're doing a plot diagram, it's always going to be to entertain because we read books, fiction books, for entertainment. Then we'll have the conflict. Is it an internal or external? And what type of conflict is it? Is it man versus man versus self, man versus nature, man versus society? We even have some new ones, man versus technology, man versus supernatural. But we'll get into that later. And then, of course, the theme. What do we learn from this story? What did the author want us to learn? Okay, this is just a brief overview of what a plot diagram looks like at Pierce County Middle School. It's again like a mountain, and every story that you read, every fiction story you read, will follow a plot diagram. I like to tell my students that every movie you watch is going to follow a plot diagram. You're going to have a beginning, a conflict, rising action. There's going to be a turning point, and there's going to be an ending. Every show you watch on TV is going to have a beginning, a conflict, rising action, a turning point, and a resolution. So you can use this plot diagram with TV shows, movies, and all fiction books.